Glad we did that. So the rest of the time that we have today, which isn't too much, at the end I'd like to lead us in a couple of practices, a poa and then an example of sudden death. But before then, I wanted to leave us time for discussion and questions, and any sharing or things that come up or things that people would really want to do or work on. I meant to bring the binder, which has more forms and things than have been in your handouts, but next time. So now I'd just like to open it up to whoever has questions, like Rosemary's questions, or comments or things that they would like to share. So
I just wanted to mention that the circles of care, the caring circles idea, I'm really glad to see that it's part of this intention. I was a member of the Shambhala community for a while, and the reason that I was there was because I took a class taught by someone who quickly after the class became ill, and she died under the care of the community and under the care of a circle of care that was created to take care of her family as they came into town, the period of time after the death, and the burial, the cremation, and the disposing of the ashes, and it was all done so beautifully and with such a lot of community involvement that I thought, this is a community that one would want to be a part of. And so I'm really heartened to see that we have that intention here too. The Circle of Care community, I don't know if they're still doing it, but it's something that I'm hoping that we can create here, because it is not just about death and dying, it's about people in short periods of illness that need a more organized support system, and we created it there, or actually Ann Kaysen created it there, and it's quite doable, so I hope we get to do that.
Thank you, Ella. I'm excited about that.
So I asked Julie if I could do this because it sort of came up for me when we were talking about people planning in advance. And captive audience, I would like to read a poem that I wrote after my father's funeral. And this is a number of years ago, but my father died suddenly in his sleep. But he had created a prepaid plan where it included a funeral, a rabbi, and a burial, and limousine for the family and so forth, but he died suddenly in Florida. And we went there, and a few minutes before the funeral with the rabbi, who didn't know him, rabbi said to my brother, my older brother, traditionally, will you say a few words about your father? My brother said, no, I can't do that. I'll get too choked up. I can't do that. Younger brother, me, sure. And I went out back with a little notepad and I wrote up something and came back, and then when the rabbi called on me, and this is the experience of that. And the poem is called Ruby, which was my father's nickname. Everyone called him Ruby. I remember looking for him in dozens of damp eyes that searched my face, in distant voices searching awkwardly for words, settling on a wooden, "I'm sorry," or a barely audible, "You look just like him." He was not in the mirror. Inside a wood box was a statue of him. I placed my palm on its wooden chest to feel the air filling my own lungs. That box was also empty. I heard myself speaking, standing at a wood podium, electric fingertips, gauging time as textured grain. I became huge, far too large to be seen from beginning to end. In one gaze, his brother, my mother, my brother, motionless in dark polished pews, surrounded by snapshots of faces. I told them we will all one day die. I loved them because they refused to believe me. Later, no one would even tell me why. It is my duty to tell the truth. The rabbi was paid to do his job. Together, he and I watched the box statue as it was lowered into a hole in the earth. He incanting an ancient prayer, me attuned to a far older silence, until swarms of gnats drove us to waiting limousines. My father's wife, his son, and his brother accompanied me back to life. He was not at his own funeral. I had been there for him. The jewel he had given me, hidden in my chest.
Oh, thank you, Helen. I don't know how many people have thought about this. I hadn't, but one of the forms that's in the binder is a form for creating your own obituary, or at least what information. And I thought, wow, that's really a good idea to think about that in advance. And I was just thinking as Peter was sharing, why not have some of that sharing now? In advance, yeah. And because, after death, it's always, there's so many things to think about and do. How nice to have that prepared, a nice thought out obituary. Anyway.
Tuesdays with Maury.
Excuse me?
Tuesdays with Maury. Do you know about that?
No.
Yeah. There's a lovely book called Tuesdays with Maury about a man, it's a true story, who decided that he wasn't going to be at his funeral, and so he wanted to have one in advance. And so he actually did that, had a arranged funeral sometime before he actually died, because he knew he wasn't going to be at his funeral, and he wanted to
be there.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Did you all catch that?
We have Tuesdays with Maury in the bookstore here at KCC. Used
Really?
copy. It's a great book.
I was thinking about that idea of writing your obituary, and it made me curious because I've always thought that the writing is for kind of the benefit of, let's say, your kids and family, and that it would reflect the way in which they perceive you as opposed to the way in which you perceive yourself. So it's just, I don't know, I have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But, primarily this is sort of mostly about benefiting those around you, it seems, at least for me. So I think I'm going to pass on writing my own obituary and see how it goes.
Well, I did write my own obituary as part of an exercise when I was in seminary. And it was an interesting experience and not nearly as difficult as I thought it might be. I still have it. It's some years old now, so I'll need to revisit it. But it was okay.
And it may not need to be the final thing, but just to help, contribute background that you might, others might not think of, that you might want to be remembered, just to help them in forming your obituary. Okay. That's it. So now I'd like to guide us through a simple, essential, is it poa or powa? Poa practice. And this comes out of the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche. So in preface to that, so let me just read the little preface. The most valuable and powerful of all practices I have found in caring for the dying, one which I have seen an astonishing number of people take to with enthusiasm, is a practice from the Tibetan tradition called Poa, which means transference of consciousness. Poa for dying people has been performed by friends, relatives, or masters quite simply and naturally all over the modern world. Thousands of people have been given the chance to die serenely because of its power. Gives me, and this is Sogyal speaking, gives me joy to make the heart of the Poa practice now available to anyone who wishes to use it. I want to emphasize that this is a practice that anyone at all can do. It is simple, but it is also the most essential practice we can do to prepare for our own death, and it is the main practice I teach my students for helping their dying friends and relatives and their loved ones who have already died. So once again, make yourselves comfortable. Adjust your bodies so they can feel relaxed, and assume that meditative posture. And then bring your mind home. Release and relax completely. So now, in the sky in front of you, invoke the embodiment of whatever truth you believe in the form of radiant light. Choose whichever divine being or saint you feel close to. If you are a Buddhist, invoke a Buddha with whom you feel an intimate connection. If you are a Christian, feel with all your heart the vivid, immediate presence of God, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, or the Virgin Mary. If you don't feel linked with any particular spiritual figure, simply imagine a form of pure golden light in the sky before you. The important point is that you consider the being you are visualizing, or whose presence you feel, is the embodiment of the truth, wisdom, and compassion of all the Buddhas, saints, masters, and enlightened beings. Don't worry if you can't visualize them very clearly. Just fill your heart with their presence and trust that they are there. Then focus your mind, heart, and soul on the presence you have invoked and pray. Through your blessing, grace, and guidance, through the power of the light that streams from you, may all my negative karma, destructive emotions, obscurations, and blockages be purified and removed. May I know myself forgiven for all the harm I may have thought and done. May I accomplish this profound practice of POA and die a good and peaceful death. And through the triumph of my death, may I be able to benefit all other beings, living or dead. Now imagine that the presence of light you have invoked is so moved by your sincere and heartfelt prayer that he or she responds with a loving smile and sends out love and compassion in a stream of rays of light from his or her heart. As these touch and penetrate you, they cleanse and purify all your negative karma, destructive emotions, and obscurations, which are the causes of suffering. You see and feel that you are totally immersed in light. You are now completely purified and completely healed by the light streaming from the presence. Consider that your very body, itself created by karma, now dissolves completely into light. The body of light you are now soars up into the sky and merges inseparably with the blissful presence of light. Remain in that state of oneness with the presence for as long as possible. And now gently bring yourself back to the room. So there are simpler variations of that. And I think there are three variations in your packet. But also there's a really short variation in the preparation for sudden death. And so I'll just read that, just since it's simple and quick. So we may have our vision of a perfect death, but life doesn't always cooperate. 1 out of 10 people will die suddenly and unexpectedly. What should we do if we're about to die in an accident? So you bring your awareness to the top of your head, recite the mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. Bringing awareness to the top of your head is a form of emergency poa. Reciting the mantra of Shinrezi, the Buddha of compassion, closes the doors to the 6 realms of samsara. It also invokes his blessing. So if compassion has a sound, it is Om Mani Padme Hum. So by bringing your awareness to the top of the head, you open your door to rebirth in the pure realms. This can be done by visualizing your guru or a deity directly above you, or merely turning your gaze upward. If you panic and can't remember what to do, then cry out to your teacher or a spiritual being for help. Instead of having "oh shit" on your mind when you're about to die, it's better to have your teacher or Amitabha on your mind and to be reborn in his pure land. So the way to practice for sudden death is to recite the mantra or visualize the deity, and whenever you receive sudden bad news or are somehow shocked, so just making it a habit. Any experience that throws you into a feeling of groundlessness is an opportunity to practice for sudden death. It's like a pending bless you after someone sneezes. So it's like for most people, a polite habit of bless you is automatic, but it didn't happen automatically. You had to practice it. So okay, so I think we're about coming to an end, and next time we'll expand on or tie up some endings of the practical things we've done today, and then spend some time with the looking at the stages of dying, and do the shamatha practice of the 5 elements, and then the dissolution of the elements at death meditation. So, any last questions or needs? Dedication. Yeah. By this virtue, may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.